this video, I'm going to share the 4 biggest mistakes I made while making my first photo book. Hey, my name is Matt. I'm a photographer, and on this channel, we talk about street photography. The first mistake is trying to throw in all bangers. What I mean by that is selecting your best photos that might be the most Instagrammable or photos that just stand out by themselves, hoping to put all those together and that'll be the book. It doesn't work that way. That's like, in basketball terms, that's putting a bunch of all-star ISO scorers on the same team. Like a team with Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, I don't know, DeMar DeRozan, Kevin Durant. Like, that sounds nice on paper, but they actually played. Like, there's only one basketball, right? So the same thing with the photo book. Like, you just can't put bangers, string bangers together and just call it a day. When I try to make my photo book just all bangers, I noticed 2 things actually. The first thing was that it didn't even really tell a story, and that was because of the second thing. These photos wouldn't necessarily relate to each other. So when I had an edit, looking through these images as a body, as a sequence, it just didn't feel right. So avoid that mistake right off the bat and just don't pick all bangers. Which brings me to mistake number 2, disregarding your subpar photos. Going along with the basketball analogy, you need subpar photos because these are like your role players, right? These are your role players that will fill out the team and actually make your team, in this case, your photo book, make sense. Things will actually fit, the pieces will fit. I realized that these subpar photos actually help fill the narrative. So I had these banger photos that I knew were bangers, that were standouts, and these subpar photos, I keep saying subpar, they're not subpar. These other photos, when put in the right sequence, actually made the banger photos stand out even more or hit home even harder. I use these photos to fill in the gaps of the narrative. These photos that you use to help fill the narrative will work together to create a vibe. And even when it's no vibe, when you think that these photos don't have an atmosphere, they still do. Even a photo of nothing is still something. For example, a photo of a sky or a photo of a beach may be on the surface a photo of nothing, but in conjunction with other images become something, even if that's as simple as setting the scene or putting the reader in that moment, like looking up at a sky and the feeling of just like laying down at a park or being in nature at a cliffside, looking at the beach creates a vibe. So a photo of nothing still creates a vibe. Don't disregard your subpar photos. Yo, I gotta sit down because holding this camera while walking actually makes my shoulders tired. The third mistake I want to share is doing everything digitally. I made my photo book entirely digitally on Adobe Lightroom. Digitally sequencing photos is a huge pain in the ass. I would scroll through photos and get to a photo that I thought would pair well with the photo I had just looked at. And then I have to scroll back up and then drag it over to this one. Basically, it was a whole mess organizing everything digitally. If I could go back, I would actually print out all my photos. I would print out all the photos I would even have the slightest hint of considering. When I was making this photo book, I had to go back and do this process a few times. And while doing that, I researched what other photographers had done for their process of making photo books. And I stumbled upon this Magnum article with the photographer Mark Powers, and he had this to say about photo books and doing things analog or tactilely. Photographs are a fantastically complex visual language all to themselves, but you have to be careful. Pairing 2 pictures you might be sure would work together often don't. For whatever reason, they might cancel each other out. On the other hand, 2 pictures that might not individually be so remarkable can each lift the other to be much better and suggest a sort of, quote, third thing floating somewhere between the 2. As they worked, the lab exploded in a riot of photographs as prints were laid out on the floor and walls of the space. The pair, both in socked feet, arranging and rearranging combinations in a physical demonstration of their thinking through this complex visual puzzle. And I feel like if I had done things more analog, if I had printed out my photos, laid them all out, and worked with them that way with my hands, then I think, I don't know, the book might have turned out differently actually. Because they were able to see everything at once and lay it all out, it was much easier for them to spot 2 images that might work together, that might pair up nicely and suggest that third thing. Whereas if you do it digitally like I did on Adobe Lightroom, because you're scrolling, you're not seeing all your photos at once. So give printing out your photos a try, don't do it digitally. Mistake number 4 was thinking that I couldn't mix black and white photos with color. I, for some reason, had this preconception that I just, in a book, should either keep it all color or all black and white, or maybe not even, and that it was a sin to put a black and white photo next to a color photo. I don't know why. It's perfectly okay to mix black and white and color. that's what I did, and I thought it turned out really nicely. And it's your photo book, so do what you want. If you found this video helpful, I recommend checking out this video where I go over the steps I took in making my first photo book, or this video where I go into the specific lessons and hacks that I learned.